We are right into it, everybody. Welcome to 3+1, the live cast, where this week we are joined by author, the one and only Reverend Brian Keith Harris II. Brian, welcome to 3+1, the live cast. It is great to have you with us, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you guys for inviting me. I'm excited about tonight, so thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Yes. We are glad you are excited, Reverend.
Yes, ma'am.
we have a lot to talk about, and there's a lot of questions that I have. I'm going to jump right into it. Brian, you wrote a book that is absolutely, doing very well. Lots of attention, lots of press. The name of the book is I Am History. Tell us about this book and what served as your motivation for it.
Absolutely. So I Am My History is actually my second book. My first book was Freedom's Design, 20 Days of Empowering Black Kings. And I wrote that book because I really wanted to find a way to encourage and inspire Black and brown children beyond the work that I was already doing with my all-boys dance company, Sons of Freedom Dance Institute. And I remember being in one of my doctoral classes, and the title of this class was Challenging the Tenacity of White Supremacy. And the class went out, we went out for lunch, and I stayed in the classroom. And I remember sitting there thinking about all of the things that we had discussed and really having a sense of sadness and saying to myself, how is it that I can continue being an educator, continue inspiring children, understanding the system that many children are living under, understanding the oppression? And I began to write the first words on my computer, which were, I am my history, walking tall, standing in royalty. I'm a direct descendant of kings and queens who ruled with grace, wisdom, and dignity. And so that poem became 20 other poems that I put into a book that gave boys grades 4 through 8 an opportunity to not just talk about the things that happened in our past, but also to talk about ways in which they can become leaders currently in their communities, in their schools, and at home. And so we took the first poem in my first book, and because of the vivid imagery, decided that we would put it into a children's book. And so that's how I Am My History was born, because it was, stemming from that first book. And now it's an opportunity for all children of all ages to understand the rich history and cultural legacy.
I have a question.
Yes.
How did you decide grades 4 through 8? Please talk to us about that, because it's something that's important.
Absolutely.
No.
Absolutely. So I chose grades 4 through 8 because there's research out. The research has been out for a while that really talks about middle school starting really in grade 4, right? And if that's not kind of shown in the transitioning, meaning they don't leave an actual school to go to 4th grade, they remain in their elementary school, that is shown in the developmental stage, as well as in the preparedness that needs to happen in order for children to make the next leap developmentally, as well as academically. And so I chose that grade because I believe that that is the grade where boys and children can really have a conversation about the things that are happening in their history. They also have an opportunity to connect some things that happen in the history to things that are happening currently. And I thought that it would just serve as a great opportunity for young men to, one, be present, to 2, have an opportunity to be self-aware, to 3, have an opportunity to express themselves, and then 4, to see the power of their own advocacy. And so some of the things that have happened out of the book is that there's a poem that talks about Black Wall Street, and there's a whole group of 4th grade boys who emailed me all of these business proposals, right? And I thought that was so amazing. And so I chose those grades because that is really the time when we're really beginning to develop children, when we're really beginning to allow children to understand their unique voice, and when we should be giving children opportunities to express their thoughts and feelings about the things that have happened and about the things that are currently happening.
Wow. I appreciate that. I used to be a teacher a long time ago. And
know, that prison pipeline to prison.
Yes.
Grade pipeline to prison. That's a real thing. And I don't think a lot of people understand how important it is for us to get our kids around that age. So I love that you're targeting. And I also love that you're targeting boys, because I think we have a lot of programming towards girls.
Yeah.
And we allow boys to kind of be a little freer of mentorship, and they go on and kind of try to find their own way.
Yeah.
But this is important to see Black men passing the torch down. So thank you.
Absolutely. It's funny you say that. I think in a real sense, in our effort to free boys from mentorship opportunities, we are also hindering boys from becoming their authentic selves, which is the reason why I really started my dance company 13 years ago, Sons of Freedom Dance Institute, because I wanted to have an opportunity to make a difference and impact in the lives of boys who, in a real sense, were interested in the performing arts, specifically dance and movement. I wanted to give them a platform to, live out their passion, but also to be around other young men who love the same thing they loved, but also give them an opportunity to be mentored and be, loved on and be encouraged and guided, and, letting them know that they are everything that, they were created and intended to be. And so that is why we named the company Sons of Freedom, because we wanted boys to truly experience the fullness of life and the freedom of all of who they are.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. And it's really, really interesting that you started Sons of Freedom, you said 13 years ago?
Yes.
13 years ago. So let me tell you, Tracey, here's some background, is that I met Brian years ago at a conference. And we didn't actually have a chance to really engage. It was a conference around like African American educators. I forget the specific name of it, but it was aimed around Black educators. And his dance team performed at the conference, and they brought the house down. It was amazing. And so the fact that you've had a passion for this and a vision for this for that number of years is absolutely impressive. What is happening now with the dance team as you have endured through the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, and so one of the things that has happened even before COVID is that our boys grew up and they became, young men who are in college. Some of them are majoring in dance. Some of them still take dance classes outside of, school, and some of them are in high school and in performing art high schools. As a result of the pandemic, and even before the pandemic, we were really thinking through restructuring Sons of Freedom to include other types of movement, particularly yoga and mindfulness, and seeing how we can connect and make connections between mindfulness and movement, just to give boys a greater opportunity to become self-aware and to understand who they are and to develop appropriate and positive emotional regulation. So as a result, we will finally be starting our classes again in the summer, and they will start with virtual master classes. And so we'll do master classes 3 times a month. And then we will move from there to holding auditions again, and we will be embracing a new group of Sons of Freedom. This will be new, and all of our older boys, some of which are in college and like I said, studying dance, are so excited to now be teachers and educators, coming back and sharing those things with the boys. So that's where we are, and we're going to rock and roll with that. It's great to sit back. Listen, it was one thing where I had to teach all the time, right? And now I have an opportunity to sit back and allow some of the older boys, the 16, 17, 18-year-olds, to teach class, which is an awesome thing to see when we can really kind of teach and then allow them the opportunity to teach as well. So that's where we are.
Brian, where are you from? Where did you get this, idea from? Where did this start? Where are you from?
Yes. So originally born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And my family moved to the Northern Virginia area when I was still in high school, 11th grade. Left there and went to college, went to Hampton University, left Hampton University and went to Richmond, and got my master's in divinity at Virginia Union School of Theology. I think when you say, where is this from? The reality is that when I was a kid, there were three things that I wanted to do. Anyone in my family could tell you, I wanted to be a preacher, I wanted to be a teacher, and I wanted to be a dancer. And I acted those things out on an everyday basis. My mother would tell you, I would be dancing down the aisles. I'd be dancing in church when I was not supposed to be dancing in church. And so I think that just kind of started, at a young age. And I'm grateful because I had family, parents, and other family members who really fueled that passion inside of me. They did not shun me. They did not say, oh, that's only for girls. They really kind of focused on what it is that I was passionate about. And as a result of that, I was able to find freedom, in the thing that I love to do. So that's where it came from.
I love it.
Yeah.
And so your dance passion started in the church?
I think so. I mean, I grew up in church my whole entire life. I come from a family of preachers and ministers and deacons and, all of that. I would say, yeah, I think my very first time leading a dance ministry was when I was 10 years old. The church, Mount Airy Baptist Church in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, amazing pastor, noted pastor, Dr. William Curtis, was the pastor at the time. And I led the whole dance ministry. I mean, there were adults in the dance ministry too. And here I was, this little kid leading dance. And so, yeah, I would say it started in church. Absolutely.
That brings up, and this is a side point. So let me tell you where the next question that I have that's coming, you can think about it, is going to be around the art that you chose for your book, because I love it. It's beautiful. It's stunning. I think that it is some of the most powerful art that I have witnessed in a children's book. By virtue of art alone, this, how you doing, Candy, to me makes this a worthwhile buy for any Black parent or anyone who is a friend of a Black child or any educator of a Black student or anyone interested in helping support that. This is a book for you. Love that. But this is a question I'm going to ask, something that is somewhat of a side that you made me think of, a statistic that I was reading last week. Generation Z, that's what we call the children now that are below millennials in terms of age range. They typically are going from about age 16 up to about age 26, up to even maybe 30. For the first time in history, this is the first generation where the majority of them are not Christians or profess any type of Christianity for the first time ever. We know that church membership and going to church has been on a continuous and consistent decline from our parents all the way down. And now it's at an all-time low. And I want to know, because when you said you started dancing in church, I grew up Methodist, okay? Let me tell you something right here. It wasn't no dancing in not one church I ever went to. Like not one person. We didn't clap hands. We did not dance. I didn't know they did tambourines for real in church until I was an adult. We sang out of a hymnal. We were there for a good hour, 30 minutes. We got our wafer. We got our little bitty cup of juice, and we kept it moving. But I did start speaking in church, right? So a lot of my speaking and ability to speak started very young as well.
Yeah.
Young people now, if they're not doing and learn that in church, I think that speaks to even more validity for your dance ministry and why you have to have it. But what do you think is the reason why so many young people are not being enticed to become followers of Christ in Christianity? And what, if anything, should the Christian church do to combat that?
Yeah, this is a loaded question. I say loaded because there's all kinds of answers that I have. So I'm going to try to keep my answers succinct. I think one of the reasons is this generation is, in a real sense, exposed to a level of research, self-research and understanding that generations previously were not interested in doing. As a result, this generation have really been able to unearth some of the gaps that exist in Christianity, some of the gaps that exist in westernized Christianity, and what it really means to be and have an authentic relationship with God that is not relegated to a church building. And so I think that's one reason. I think the other reason is, in a real sense, many churches, certainly not all, but many churches have not been able to make the transition from the previous generations to the current generation, meaning some of their approaches, some of their theological stances, some of the ministries that are in the church, some of the ways of the church are not meeting the needs of the current generation of people. And I think that is a real problem. And I think that's a problem because if we think about the life of the church and what the church was during the civil rights era or movement, if you will, we see that the church really spoke to the times that people were in. In other words, they were able to really parallel their theology, their work in the church to what was socially happening in our country and in our communities. And I think what has happened currently is that a lot of that work is not being done. Now, there are churches who absolutely have done a lot of work to diversify their approach, to inform their theology, and therefore young people are developing new relationships with God and having new methods as to approach God. So I think those are just some of the reasons. As it relates to what the Christian church can do, I think one of the things that the Christian church can do is listen. Listen to the generation, right? And understand that this is a generation that they also have their understanding of God, right? This is a generation that grew up when, social and political rest was at an all-time high. We've always experienced the assault of Black and brown people since we got to this country, but it's at an all-time high and has been for a series of years. So I think one of the things that the Christian church or the Christian leaders can do is really begin to hear what it is that the generation is saying, and more importantly, hear what and how they see and experience God from their authentic being, right? Because what ends up happening is that when you hear how the generation is experiencing and expressing God, then that gives you the opportunity to inform your own theology, right? Your understanding of God. Where is God in the midst of all of the social, political unrest that we're experiencing? Where is God in an age where we have to defend our being pro-Black or our Blackness? Where is God in the midst of all of those pieces? So I think listening is a really big tool. And then lastly, I think just really understanding the difference between four things: Christianity, the building, spirituality, and being a Christ follower. All of those things are different. And as a result of us not really knowing the difference, we are not addressing the needs of this generation from a spiritual or theological perspective.
Let me tell you this. That was the best answer I have heard. I have loved many podcasts. I have. I love when we had G-Code on the podcast. There have been some great, let me tell you, that was probably one of the best statements I have ever heard on this podcast. And it was hands down one of the most, that answered the question in a beautiful way. Everything you just said should be broken down into a full book that talks about this moment, that talks about where is God, if Black Lives Matter, or do Black Lives matter to God? Like, do Black Lives matter to God? Of course the answer is yes. But that is what so many young people are searching for and what they need to hear to understand about everything you said. That's the next book. Now, it's going to take you a long time to write it. It's a lot easier said than done, but that would resonate so well, with the world, and the world needs to hear it. Tracy, do you have any questions to follow up? Because I'm going to take that clip and I'm going to study some. I'm going to break that down.
I think he said all the things that I was going to say. I also wanted to know, you don't have to answer, but I wanted to know, how do you feel about churches being deemed places that seek money? I know a lot of younger folk are like, it's a business. They're not teaching about Christ. Why should I go to church? All they doing is taking people money. So, what do you think about that? Because I feel like that plays a major part as to why I left mega churches, definitely. Because I was like, I don't see you all in the community the way you should be. Not saying they weren't, but I'm just like, this is a huge church and you only got one giving campaign, turkey drive, toy drive, you're not thinking outside of the box, so that was a lot.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think many people walk away from church because of that misguided understanding that churches are there to take your money. But that misguided understanding oftentimes is because of a misapproach by churches. And when I say misapproach or misappropriated money approach, I mean, in order for perhaps people to really understand why it is important for us to give, perhaps we have to be able to kind of see the benefits of our giving, right? I believe that if the church was speaking to the needs of people, and if the church was in a visible way meeting the needs of the people, then people would feel comfortable giving. When you think in terms of the giving of the church, we have to understand that there is a part of church that is a business. In other words, the lights have to stay on, right? The building has to be paid for. That's a real thing. And I think we have to think in terms of it almost as a Black-owned business, right? If we think of it in terms of that, I don't think the movement of the church should change. And when I say movement, I mean there still should be evidence of what it is that people are giving. It's just that when we begin to see church as this entity that we as a Black community need to pour into, because it is a staple in our community, that it has a place in our community, and that it is actively empowering, educating, enriching, and inspiring people, then we will be more comfortable to give. But again, the visible portion of the giving has to be seen, and not just seen, understood and felt. Understood and felt.
Impact. That's
right.
Impact.
That's right.
Not impact church.
No, you hit it though. You said it when you said Impact Church. I was just, Tracey knows that I have been a member of the United Methodist Church my entire life, born and raised Methodist. But here's the thing, and I still go to a Methodist church. I go to Impact United Methodist Church here in Atlanta, which is a type of a mega church. Mm-hmm. But with a United Methodist Church, my money doesn't go to necessarily my church or my pastor. It goes to the annual conference where that money is broken down and it's divided up and it's sent out. My minister, my pastor, Olu Brown, who I know brings in millions of dollars in that church. He doesn't get paid from the church. He gets a check like I get a check from an employer. He's employed by the United Methodist Church. So I like that about the Methodist Church. In addition to that, you hit the nail on the head when you said community centers. Many churches are not meeting that need in the community anymore. But Impact is, and that's why I go there. So as we were looking and you had the whole entire voter suppression movements in Georgia fighting to get Warnock and Ossoff elected, Warnock kicked off his campaign. Also, they were right there at Impact. Impact said, use our space, use our church, have your drive-in rallies. And it was all because they care about the community. I am not seeing that from everybody. So, when you say Impact, Tracey, that's why I go to my church. That's why I go to Impact, but I agree with it. When you talk about, we go back to this amazing cover art.
Yeah.
What motivated this cover? Who did the beautiful artwork in the book? And why did you make these artistic choices with this selection?
So my illustrator is CJ Love, phenomenal young man who resides in Baltimore, Maryland, is the illustrator of many other books as well. Currently illustrating my third book, which will come out this summer. One of the things that I love most about CJ is that every book that CJ is connected to, he is invested in. That's important because sometimes when you are a children's book author, the people that you are working with almost oftentimes act as contractors, right? And that's fine, but it's more important for those people to be invested in the work, because if they're invested in the work, then they're going to put everything into the work for it to be successful and impactful for children, for families, for teachers, and for whomever picks up the book. Having said that, the very first thing that I told CJ is that I wanted children, because the book is called I Am My History, and my attempt was to help children to understand that history is not something that is separate of them, but history is them, and history is connected to them. As a result of them being connected to their history, I wanted them to feel as if they were a part of every single piece of the book. And that starts with the cover. If you notice, the cover is of a little boy. He has a haircut with a dope part. I love parts, and most Black and brown boys love parts too. It's like a treat when you're able to get a part when you're a kid. He also has AirPods in his ear, right? Which really just speak to the time in which we are in. It also speaks to this. This is a point that many people don't see, obviously, but in talking, they're able to see. The earbuds, when we put earphones in our ear, we oftentimes are blocking out the other noise to hear something that is intentional, right? And as a result, I wanted to make sure that this young man had those AirPods because he was blocking out all of the negative people and all of the things that told him that he and his history were not important or insignificant. And as a result, he said, listen, I'm blocking out that noise to hear my ancestors affirm me and speak to me and let me know that I'm my history. The last thing is this. What you may not realize is that it is a young boy, but he's also memorialized. In other words, he's a monument. He's a statue. And that's just representation of the fact that I wanted to memorialize and celebrate our ancestors. And so he is the manifestation of that celebration. And he's also the manifestation of our present. That's the cover.
Boom!
Amazing. And so again, the book is I Am My History. And Brian, we're going to put a link on our website, 3+1 Media, so that anyone can quickly find and have access to it. But can people buy it on Amazon?
Yes, people can buy it on Amazon, but when you purchase it from the site, briankeithharris.com, 3 things happen. 1, you get a signed copy. 2, you get a chance to see the other products that are on there. I have a free tool for educators or parents who are interested in jumping into mindfulness with their children. So there's a free a downloadable piece about mindfulness, but also there's a teaching guide that accompanies I Am My History. And it has everything from additional topics that you can talk with your children or students about, to a coloring of a crown, to a word search that has all of the words in the book to really increase vocabulary, exposure, and usage, to some writing prompts, and to some fill in the blank opportunities. And so that's the benefit of buying the book from briankeithharris.com. And I might add, on the website, briankeithharris.com, the book is cheaper. So you can buy from Amazon. But why buy from Amazon when you can buy from this Black man right here?
That's right.
That's right.
I'm getting the book now. I'm sending it to, I was homeschooling, doing Zoom homeschooling.
Yes.
A young boy, he's 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to gift him. So I'm trying to get his address.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Awesome.
Get his address, and it'll be great to see it. So it's time to move into, and I'm going to, if everybody can kind of just mute, because I'm hearing some background. So mute for me, Brian. Let's see if that's going to fix it.
Okay.
And then we'll each mute, because I think sometimes when most people are unmuted, it'll happen. So we'll stop and we'll kind of go back and forth. Guys, it's time to go into the weeks, our up, down, the clown. But we're going to start off on a pretty somber note, because last Saturday was the anniversary, unfortunately, of the killing, the murder, the slaying of Breonna Taylor. So I want everybody to take a moment of silence as we reflect on her life lost and where we have come as a nation since that time. And guys, since that time, it's amazing that we were in the middle of the beginning of the pandemic, sweeping the country, schools shutting down, our lives being upended and really altered for a full year and more during the time when this young lady lost her life. And it would have been so easy for this to have been completely covered up and swallowed up by the pandemic, by not only the pandemic, but the foolishness of Donald J. Trump. But thankfully, advocates and people fought hard and advocated and made sure that we heard and we knew her name. In the same way that people had to come forth, band together for the Black Lives Matter movement, the movement, not the organization, but the movement, because to me, they are different. We have happening right this week, right here in the city of Atlanta, a new wave of hate that is the direct result of white terrorism. It is my belief that what happened to Breonna Taylor was a result not just of police brutality, but the result of white terrorism, because those police officers who shot and killed her in her partner's home were, in my opinion, terrorists. I don't see them as police officers only. I see them as a part of a movement of terrorism where they assume the worst of Black people and they go in with guns drawn. And I think that the exact same thing happened in Atlanta when a young man, I don't know if we can say it's allegedly, it's clearly, I think he's confessed the crime, went into 3 different Asian massage parlors and he gunned down everyone that he saw, killing 8 people or shooting 8 people, I think wounding, he killed 7 people. One person I think is still alive. Multiple people are of Vietnamese descent, other from Korean descent. We are now looking again at this whole thing happening in a different way with white terrorism. That's definitely this week's down. I just want to open the floor and just talk about the issue and what are some things that we can do. I just want to talk about what can we do as Black people to talk about the moment. And I did see the article where the first thing the NBC posted was, what can Black people do to help the Asian community? It was insensitive and it was ignorant of NBC to post that, because what you really should be asking is, what can the whole country do to stop white terrorism? But tone deafness happened. But I do want to know, what can we talk about? How can we support and uplift this community?
So the first thing, if we can just briefly go back to talk about Breonna Taylor just for a moment, I just want to raise these 2 things. Because Saturday not only was the 1-year anniversary of Breonna Taylor's death, but Saturday was also the 1-year anniversary of a Methodist bishop, Barbara Harris, of her death as well, who is actually from Louisville, Kentucky. Not only that, but on that very same day, Reverend Valerie Mayo just became the new bishop of the Episcopal Church of Louisville on that exact same day. So all 3 Black women, 1 gunned down, 1 no longer here, yet the other one is and has an opportunity to continue to speak their names in that particular city where Breonna Taylor was killed. So just wanted to kind of raise that as well. As it relates to the comment that you made or that you saw, what can Black people do? I'm oftentimes so tired of hearing those kinds of things. When an assault is made on a community or a culture, oftentimes the rhetoric is, what can the victims do? Right? And that's a sickness. It's a sickness to victimize people, to dehumanize people, to criminalize people, and then to ask them to be a part of their own retribution, if you will. And so 1, that's a sickness that has to completely end. Secondly, I think the thing that we can really do is continue to fight white terrorism. And I like that you talked about white terrorism being something that is not just a white person with a gun. It's not just a white person who has weapons or who is using violent language or behavior. It's even the white people who are sitting in the halls of Congress who continuously uphold the white privilege and white supremacy in a way that is sickening and a way that is crippling communities that are not white. And so I think one of those things is standing in solidarity with the Asian American community, with the Latin American community, and really going toward laws that are put in place, hate crime laws. I believe right now there's only 49 states that have hate crime laws, and there really are no states that have a system to even track hate crimes before they become the actual crime, right? And so these are things that we as communities who've been assaulted as communities who have been victimized can do to stand together to fight white terrorism and to fight against the supremacy and the privilege that has, in a real sense, destroyed and ruined our communities and our cultures since the beginning of time. Those are some of the things that we can do.
Yeah.
I agree 110%. I agree 100%. So I talked about not this. I didn't talk. This wasn't something I talked about on Monday when I did a live cast, and I was attacked to a certain extent by the whole audience and the people that I do that podcast live cast with, because I stand firm in the belief that we can only one race of people can end racism. There's only one race of people on this earth who can end racism. I, as a Black man, can't end racism because I didn't start it, I don't perpetuate it, and I don't endorse it. So I can't end it. We are dependent on white people to end racism because they're the ones who perpetuate it and live by and uphold it and benefit from it. And every single effort to keep other marginalized and affected people apart or communities apart from it benefits racism and oppression. So I think it's important that even though there are lots of communities out there who may not understand the Black struggle, I think it's important for us to do what we can if we're not overwhelmed, overburdened, or heavy laden to alleviate that, right? So as a Black person in America who's experienced racism my entire life, I feel as though I can be of benefit to other groups who may not understand that racism exists or that they're affected by racism. I believe that there are some Black people who want to assimilate and pretend like racism doesn't exist. Candace Owens, Christian Walker. So if they exist in the Black community, I know they have to also exist in the Asian American Pacific Islander community. I don't have a problem doing what I can to educate them about racism and give support and guidance on how they can deal with it to be better and be stronger and move towards wholeness. I think it's important for every community to wrap their arms around this community at this time and expect nothing in return. I don't care if, that when the next time someone kills a Breonna Taylor, because we know that it's going to happen. We don't want it to happen. We pray it doesn't happen. But sadly, we in this country, we know it's going to. If not one person who is not Black supports us, that's okay. But I want to do it because it's the right thing to do. So this is something that I'm doing just to have a small impact in my community. I frequent 2 businesses that are Asian businesses, right? So how we support Black businesses, I frequent 2 Asian businesses, so I go there, and it's my one favorite spot for Chinese food. One spot that I go to get my pedicure. Which one's the feet? The pedicure. You ain't cut my fingernails now. I do that myself. I'm from Mississippi. We ain't wasting too much money when you're from Mississippi. So, I go there. So what I did was I went in and I gave every employee a tip. I didn't order food. I didn't get a manicure. I just walked in and said, I want you to know I love you and I'm praying for you, period. I just gave everybody the amount of money that I had to give for whoever was working that day at both of those spots. And that was just my way of saying you are supported. I, as a Black person, am here to let you know that I care about you and I care about your plight. So I think that any small act of kindness and thing that you can do would be beneficial, I think. And here's someone, look at this. Stop playing the victim, Zack. We didn't attack you. We didn't say we don't need white people to help in this journey. We said we don't need allies who are only doing it as a performative manner. We need advocates who are willing to work. And I get that, but here's the thing. Some people don't know how to be anything but what they are. And the fact that they're willing to, if all you do as a white person is post up that Black thing on your Instagram or a Black eye your social media, it is a start. It is a step in the right direction. When you have a whole entire news network, Fox News, Newsmax, a whole group of people telling you that you are the victim because you're white, telling you it's called white apology and white apologists, that you don't owe Black people anything, that you have no role to play in stopping racism. Just the fact that you don't adopt that white supremacy rhetoric is a step in the right direction for me. Do I want more? I do. But I still recognize the small steps, because we're never going to get there if we don't recognize the small steps. You know, I'm on a fitness journey with a trainer, and it is not easy, it is not fun, and I hate it every time I go. But I'm like, let me tell you, if you just give me, like, this is the reward you can give me, is to tell me that instead of me doing 20 of these burpees, I can only do 18. If I do 18 of them right, that's enough for me to feel good and give you 18 really good burpees. So I believe in recognizing those small steps.
I also wanted to say too, to the point that was just on the screen, I think that in a real sense, we cannot expect every single person to be doing the same thing, right? People have to be strategically placed in different spaces in order for us to create change. So in a real sense, I'm an educator. So one of the things that can occur is educating our children about Asian American culture and about the assault on Asian Americans, because many of our children do not even understand who they are, right? Our boys don't even see other people other than they look like them when they go to school every day, because I work at a Black and brown school. So
are we teaching our Black and brown children? I like to call them Black. Yeah. Are we teaching them about their history properly first?
Right, and that's the point. We're not teaching them about their history, but I think that both things can happen, right? Mm-hmm. I think that one of the things that can happen in order for us and in order for our children really to have this understanding of I don't want to say oppression, but the oppression that their culture has received, that we've received as Black people, as well as understanding that there are other cultures, there are other races of people who've also experienced that same kind of oppression. And what our response should be is, you know, is one of the ways that we can do that, right? So we're teaching our children, obviously, about their history, but we're also teaching them that there are other people in this country. There are other cultures, there are other races in this country who equally have had similar experiences. And our response to those people, or our response to any people who in a real sense, their culture has been oppressed, who they are is being assaulted or victimized. Obviously, we wouldn't use that language for children, but anyone like that, our response should be what, right? A response of kindness, or what are the things that we can do? And so that's one of the ways that I am creating change, is by helping our kids to, one, have a level of awareness, because sometimes you having a level of awareness absolutely can change your behavior. And I may not be the person to run for council, right? To sit on boards and affect change in that way. But one of the children that I gave a level of awareness to may be able to do the same. So even if every single person is not marching or not going to Congress, it does not mean that we're not having any kind of tangible action items to support the oppression and the assault of other people in this country. It just means that we're strategically placed in other places to create that change that we want to see, which is why there are teachers in the classroom, and there are also people who work for the Department of Education, right?
Yeah.
Both have the same goal, different vantage points.
I'm on the opposite end. I don't believe it is my responsibility as a Black woman or a Black person to have to teach other people about something that they created. I don't think it's my responsibility to teach other cultures about racism that they are watching on a daily basis. I will advocate for them. I will, make posts, and I will call it out when I see it, but I don't think it's my responsibility as a Black person to do any of that, because we've been doing it. We've been showing you that we have been oppressed. We have been marginalized. We have been brutalized by police officers, and you have turned a blind eye. That bothers me. That really bothers me. So while I agree, we need to stop Asian hate. We need to stop hate, period. I'm not going to be the one,
Right. Well, Tracey, I'm not gonna let you go on too long, and you know why.
Yeah. I know.
No lie. So I want to interject, but here's
I had to say that.
You're right.
That's
You're
good,
right.
though. That's good. That's
And
good.
I agree with you. Amanda Seals posted a beautiful video today where she said that, and I agree with her. But I also feel like for some of us, it is a calling. I'm gonna be honest. I genuinely feel as though God has called me to teach about this issue, and I actually take great joy in it. And I'm happy to recognize the small steps, right? And even though Zach wants there to be like this massive change, if he thinks it's going to happen and all these white people are finna kumbaya who've been racist all their lives, he's mistaken. Donald Trump is not about to do one single thing, and Don Trump Jr. isn't going to put down his cocaine dollar roll pipe. Now, I don't know how you snort coke, right? Like, I don't know if there's a special coke straw you can buy when you're rich, because I only up and they sniff it up there. Donald Trump Jr. is not going to put down his cocaine dollar to care about racism. It's not going to happen.
No.
But if he begins to go in the right direction, I'm happy to give him a hand clap of praise, because it's more than I would expect him to do.
I'm not going to get the hand clap of praise. I'm not going to do that. I'm not giving no hand clap of praise. I'm with Tracey on that one. Nah, we ain't going to get a brother hand clap of praise. It's a little too far.
Throw the rock, hide your hand. I won't trust that person, but I will say I will appreciate more white people educating each other. I will appreciate more white people.
But can they? Can you really educate?
They can. I'm gonna tell you why. Because I received text messages saying, I am so sorry this is happening to your community, or is there anything that I can get for you or do for you? So if you recognize that I'm in pain about something that is happening to my community, then you can call it out in your homes, in your institutions, in your organizations. So yes.
But I agree too.
No, but we also have to help show people how to do that, because that's not natural for everyone.
They know how to do it.
No, I think so. So here's my thing about that. Now I'm with Trace on this. We're not going to show white people how to do anything, right? They created this construct, and in a real sense, I don't know if some of them even know how to get out of it. But one thing that they can do is be complete allies who put into action their allyship. And I say that because, like, for example, we have a chaplain at our school, right, who absolutely is committed and dedicated to affirming the lives and working for Black and brown boys in our school. And those things are followed up in his actions, in his belief system, and the ways in which he even educates our children, right? About religion, about theology, all of those things that, we can say, absolutely, this is a person who is celebrating Black and brown people, and even the work that he's done over the last 30 years. So I do think that it's possible. I think that when you say show, I think in a real sense, I don't know if I like the term show, because it almost means you've created the ill and now you want me to show you what happened as a result of you brutalizing and victimizing and creating a construct that oppress my people. No, sir, no, ma'am, right? But I do understand what you're saying, in that maybe not necessarily show, but maybe unearth. It is a better way. Maybe unearth. But then I go back to Tracey, because they know we've shared year after year after year since the beginning of time, right? Like, we've even starting during Reconstruction, we have shown the devastating effects and impact of racism, of enslavement. We've shown that, and yet, in a real sense, like Tracey said, there's been no real response, and not a response that's big enough that would end racism, because we're experiencing it full throttle even today.
They need that white lady that does those education experiments. I forget her name. They need that woman to teach them, because I don't have the energy to do it. They know what racism looks like. They know what words, what verbiage they use to describe white men who terrorize individuals and what
you're right. You guys are right. But think again, you have the narrative of people. Here you had the Black Lives Matter movement happen. And American sentiment in support of Black Lives Matter, the movement, at the beginning of the movement was 80 to 90% approval. Now it's down to 40% approval. You're saying they know. Yeah, they know. They saw the news, but you have to understand there's a counter narrative that's running in personal interest for racism and white supremacy that exists. Every time a white person turns on Fox News and watches Tucker Carlson, they're getting filled up with the ideas of white supremacy that tells them that we are trying to make them feel bad, that tells them we're trying to make them apologize just because they exist, because God made them white.
They should feel bad. They should feel bad.
We're fighting. You're trying to fight against that, and that's some powerful stuff. When you already have been taught your whole life that you know everything and you're right just because you're white. That is powerful stuff. Thank you.
Yes, Jane Elliott. Thank you.
But again, and so that's why I'm saying there's a lot of complexity around change behavior. There's a lot around it, and it's really, really difficult to do. If all of your life you have been taught racist behaviors and racist ideas, to think that all of a sudden a light bulb is going to come on because Jane Elliott told you to change, or that Zach Kirk told you to change, it's not realistic. It's a lifelong process that I am willing to accept from anybody in the world who wants to change and grow.
Zach, here's the thing. It's not about going to a Jane Elliott workshop, but it is about implementing it in our education system. And there are ways in which—
But guess what, Tracey? Guess what?
Just like they want to take out Black History Month and
that's right.
You can okay, you want to take that out?
But here's the opposite, Tracey. You got to think about this. That's the whole point of what I'm saying. We had a whole movement where people were saying, let's bring in the 1619 curriculum and teach American history the right factual way. We had a whole movement that wanted to bring in culturally relevant and responsive theory and pedagogy in the schools. The opposite response is from the racists, let's take out Black history altogether. Every time we make progressive steps forward, you have these people like Marjorie Taylor Greene that want to pull you back. We are fighting against that, and we can't fight against it because we don't uphold the system, Brian.
So one of the things that we can do is we can create our own, right? So, and rather than us asking white people to do anything, right? I think Marcus Garvey has a quote that talks about that. We can create our own, specifically our own schools, where we are educating our children about the rich history and their cultural legacy, because that is the beginning of the brainwashing propaganda. The book Brainwashed talks about that in a real sense, we are in a system that one of the reasons why Black history is taken out, or it's not elevated, or it's not affirmed in the school, that's by design. It's so that our children do not or always see themselves in an inferiority complex or with an inferiority complex, and they never aspire to greatness. But if we create our own schools where we are in charge of what is being taught, and we are in charge of teaching the truth about Black history before 1619, or we're at the helm of teaching about the civilizations that our people created. If we're at the helm of that, then we have a chance of making sure that our children know truth, that they live in truth, and that they're able to combat the lies that are spewing out of the mouths of racist, white, supremacist people who continuously perpetuate that propaganda that we're less than, or that we in some sort of way can't aspire to be greater. When you think about the two communities that created their own, you think about Mound Bayou in Mississippi, that whole community of people who created their own banks, their own schools, and they were saying, listen, we are going to be responsible for teaching our children. We no longer are going to subscribe to this system of oppression. Then you also think about Black Wall Street. And look what happened, right? Like, it was burned down. But we have an opportunity to absolutely, undefinably create our own systems, create our own structures where we are educating our children the truth about the history, as well as the truth about how our history was taken from us or stolen from us. We have an opportunity to do that.
I'm in agreement with that. Now, I don't mind teaching that part, but I'm not teaching white people about something that they should be teaching each other.
Absolutely.
And so that's all I got to say about that. Let's move on to the next topic. Who's next? Go.
So we will move on to the next topic. And it is ideal to do that, but we all know that is not something that can be a reality in every neighborhood. But we will move on. And this is a conversation that we need to have a panel and go deeper in it, because I think it's definitely worthy of fleshing out and having this captured and memorialized. So the next topic really is going to the up. And the up really does kind of come into the fact that we finally had COVID-19 relief passed in America, what probably will be the last stimulus of $1.9 trillion. Checks started to arrive and hit bank accounts this week. And it has been the question is, do people really know the value of what happened here and how it happened? Number one, not one Republican senator in the United States of America voted for this bill, although the majority of states in America that are in the lowest economic status, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas,
Tennessee,
Oklahoma, are run by Republican leaders and have 2 Republican senators, they're going to benefit the most. In addition to getting a $1,400 check, that's like the direct benefit that many people saw. You also have an extension of $300 per week in federal unemployment until the end of September. You also now have a child tax credit that goes into effect of $37 per child that will be distributed throughout the course of the year, not at just one lump sum at tax time, as well as the appropriate funding for vaccines, to reopen schools and ensure that children are safe, and to help offset the loss in tax revenue from last year's pandemic for state and local governments to run effectively. This has been one of the biggest, most sweeping relief packages in the history of this country. And are people giving enough credit to the Biden administration for this huge up?
Are they giving the people I know are. So
I've seen a lot of black people. You know what I've seen? Let me show you what I've seen. I'm gonna show y'all what I've seen. You know what I've seen? I've seen this. That's Kamala. That's Vice President Kamala Harris, and it's a common thing that says gas prices getting a little high, Joe.
I didn't.
Gas prices getting a little high, Joe. You haven't seen the gas prices getting a little high?
Yeah, I paid $3.19 for my premium the other day, and I recognized it went from $2.99. Yes, I saw.
So a lot of people are critiquing President Biden's administration for gas prices, although he has nothing to do with the price of gas. And I haven't seen a whole lot of praise about this actual relief bill and how it's going to transform America. It's estimated that 6 million children will be lifted out of poverty because of the amount of money and relief being given to families in terms of multiple, stimulus amounts for children, plus the tax rebate, plus the direct income to parents. As a matter of fact, this is a shocking statistic. 89% of American households will receive some stimulus benefit, like an actual amount of money. 89% of American households. 89%.
Well, we should expect the criticism because we no longer have a president who is gaslighting, who's on Twitter every 5 seconds, spewing out false information or turning people against each other. So now we're not paying attention. We don't have to sit there and listen to that. Now people are going to say, oh, he doesn't talk enough. He doesn't do that. He's going to be under a microscope. Every little thing he does, every little bill he passes or does not pass. And so this should be expected.
I agree. I think that it just perpetuates the idea that Joseph Biden, our President Biden, is not officially the president, that there was some, things that happened. And, it just perpetuates that whole idea that, Republicans in a sense really don't want him to do well. So anything that is positive, anything that is progressive, anything that is moving the country closer to where we need to be as it relates to moving away from the pandemic and having all of the resources for families who have been affected by the pandemic, for schools and all of those pieces, anything that looks like progression, right, is going to be criticized, right? And so I think that, again, just perpetuates that agenda that, he's not really, or he didn't really get elected, in the truest form. So I think that's to be expected.
And they want to maintain their office seats. They don't want to lose.
They want to control their. Yeah, right. Keep their jobs.
Keep their jobs.
They don't want to allow people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and what's that lady from Colorado who just got her
Gilbert,
so she could run for office to take their positions, because now they know, we don't have to go to college to be in politics. We don't have I don't have to go to what is it? Science. What's the science that they do? I'm an actor now. Political sci. I don't have to go and for 4 years in college they want to keep their position. So they want to keep their constituents happy, which I think is stupid. You mean to tell me you don't think you can outrun somebody who does not have not saying that they're not educated, but someone who doesn't have the experience and that. Boy, please.
Or the formal training. Now, Tracey, I know you have to go, but before you go, I do want to go back to one other down of the week, because this has made a lot of waves. Brian, I know in your world it's made a lot of waves. I also discussed this on Monday. My opinion wasn't popular, but people got really mad at me about this. Because, everybody loves Kirk Franklin. GP, are you with me? Oh, yeah, we have a church. We ain't going nowhere. And this is the traditional Kirk Franklin that the world sees, smiling, happy, good old Kirk, praise the Lord. But this week we heard the release tape of his argument with his son, Kieran, where he said he was going to put his foot up his blank. A lot of parents in the Black community defended this. I mean, it was overwhelming support that I saw pour out for Kirk Franklin, and I didn't agree with it at all. I definitely want to know the opinion of Tracey and Brian. I want your opinions on it, and I'll save mine for last because nobody's going to probably agree with me anyway.
So here's my thing. I think that we saw Kirk Franklin, having a heated conversation with his son, or a heated argument with his son. Okay. Many people are saying things like this: his son's grown. His son should get over it. His son should deal with it. And one of the things that I think is so important that we understand is that oftentimes we in the Black community have been conditioned, to believe that, let me back up. One of the things that's important for us to recognize is that we oftentimes inflict trauma on our children as parents. No matter what we do, there are some aspects where we inflict trauma. And then when we don't deal with the trauma, when our children are children, when they become older, we almost want them to deal with the thing that we inflicted on them. Mm-hmm. And I think at the end of the day, one of the things that we really have to talk about is, what does Black parenting look like? And also understand that much of our parenting is a direct reflection of what Dr. Joy DeGruy calls post-traumatic slave syndrome. That we as a culture have really understood parenting to be this: when our children, or if we want our children to submit or obey or follow the rules, then we will physically direct them. And when I mean physically direct them, we all know what I'm saying, right? Many of us may have grown up in that kind of culture. We've been conditioned to believe that that is the acceptable way to parent, when the reality is that that way often causes trauma for our children. And when our children become adults, the trauma doesn't leave them. It just takes on a different form. I'm saying all of that to say, my only thing about this whole situation is to not fully discard Kirk Franklin's son or fully discard the trauma or the pain that that young man experienced when he was a child, because that pain and that trauma is a real thing. It's a real thing to be the child of a father who had you as a teenager, right? Who didn't make the best choices as a teenager, then got remarried, then had another group of children. And in a real sense, you may have felt isolated, or you may have felt like you were, in a real sense, kind of discarded. We don't know what Kirk Franklin's current wife said to him about the son or said to the son. All of these things could have created trauma. Now,
Brian, you agree with me? Like, we're on 100% the same page. Everybody jumped to Kirk Franklin's defense because they looked at it from the perspective of Kirk Franklin fathers like our father, Kirk Franklin parents like our parent. The reality is, just because you can produce a child doesn't mean you've ever raised a child. And I'll say this: no child is going to talk to their parent in a disrespectful manner if they were reared to not talk to their parents in a disrespectful manner.
I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know if I agree with that.
That is not true. And I'll tell you why. Because I was a disobedient, disrespectful teenage girl. And I said some things to my mother, and she never spewed anything back, but she should have. And so here's my issue with the entire Kirk Franklin. I'm not sticking up for him. I don't have kids. I'm not sticking up for him because I talk to my kids that way. I'm sticking up for him because have we even thought, yes, to all of those things about his, having a teenage father and what the wife, but have we ever thought that maybe this child was disobedient? Maybe this child was deviant. Maybe this child had done some things in that household. Maybe this child spoke out against his family, maybe cussed him out, because we didn't hear that part. We just heard Kirk. We also did not get to hear the counselor. These people have been in counseling since this kid has been 13. So apparently there has been a problem. So we're not taking any of that into consideration for those people. Like, we need to look at that. Look at you when you were a kid. Look at you as an early 20. And y'all, yes, he is 33. And I'm not discounting the things that he may have gone through, but it's a way in which he could have gone about this.
I agree.
I would never air my father or my mother out, regardless how wrong I felt they were. Like, he knew this would hurt his career. First of all, I know this man has taken care of you, at least financially, had given you.
We don't know that. We don't know that. We do not know that he's done that.
I'm going to explain how I believe, allegedly, that he has. Because the daughter spoke out and said, you are acting entitled. And whenever you have an entitlement, or let's just take kids who go through divorce and their parents get remarried. There's a lot of parents who try to overcompensate. Well, I know I'm not in the home, so let me give him this, or let me expose her to that, or let me try it, because they're not in my home as often. So we got to take some of that into consideration. I'm not blaming Kirk all the way. It's two people involved in this. And the way he sounded on that recording, he sounded like he was setting him up. It was blackmailing him, or it just seemed vindictive.
Yeah, and I think, but I agree with you, Tracey. And I think that sometimes what happens that when kids experience a level of trauma, even if some of those things are things that you brought on, right? Like you said, him being defiant, or him, creating things in the household. When kids are experiencing that level of hurt, when people are experiencing that level of hurt, there are some drastic ways of behavior that people show when they're experiencing a level of hurt and trauma. And so I think that's a result of it. And this is not me in any sort of way saying that I am upholding the actions of either of the son, one, posting it on social media, two, like you said, almost in a real sense, blackmailing your father. I'm not upholding that. I'm just really kind of saying that this is an opportunity for us as a community to talk about our parenting and perhaps maybe talk about the impact of our parenting. And I am speaking from someone who is a parent. My son is 19. He'll be 20 years old in July. And so I understand what it feels like when your child is being defiant, right? But I also know what it feels like when you have, in a real sense, perhaps inflicted some of the things that you said you would never do onto your child. And you've been able to watch how that has directly affected your child. So I'm kind of seeing it from both spaces, but I do not believe, like you, I do not believe that should have been posted. I also do not believe in the way in which he did it. It was almost like antagonizing his father and gaslighting. So I do understand that those things came out of it. And I just don't want us to raise or celebrate that's just a father being a father, because not all fathers use that kind of language or that kind of aggression to their children. Not all of them do, right?
They do, and I'm in agreement with that. I'm just saying I'm not going to be quick to side with the son either. Right. I want to hear all of the sides, and if you're not going to air all of the sides out, then
leave it alone. Yeah,
it's not like you're in a physically abusive relationship where I can see the black eye, right? So if I need to see both sides of this where I can, I don't know,
have a better understanding. So I'll say, here's a side for you. As we get ready to conclude, Tracey, give us 5 minutes, real quick, 5 final minutes. As we prepare to conclude, do you want to see all sides of this week's clown, Sharon Osbourne? That's Sharon Osbourne. She is definitely getting the clown of the week. Is that a side, Tracey, you want to give? While we giving a lot of consideration to Kirk Franklin, are we going to give the same consideration as Sharon Osbourne and her comments made and directed on the talk?
No, because it was her day, because she has been notorious for inflicting racism on other
whole family. The whole family.
Yeah, Holly Robinson Pete was called ghetto when she was on the talk, but your husband is biting off bat heads on live TV and at concerts.
And daughter also making racist comments as well. So no, she does not get a pass for that. I think that she has a history, and this was an opportunity for her to stand against her other racist friend, Piers Morgan. And as a result, people started bringing up all of the other pieces of racism that she has inflicted and spewed and put it all together. And listen, it's valid.
It's what it is. And Kevin Frazier, shame on you for tagging the Amanda Seals and Cheryl Underwood and Holly Robinson Pete, so they could have a moment of retribution where they could sit and talk and this thing out. No, she doesn't get that. She needs to identify where she's wrong
and stay off the show.
Exactly. She needs to identify where she's wrong and work on it. And let's get another host.
It may be time for the talk to go. So I've never watched the talk, right? Like, I don't watch Wendy, the talk, or the real. I only watch The View sometimes. That's the only one of those daytime shows I watch. I like real news. I like to watch CNN all the time, MSNBC throughout the day now that I'm working from home. That's what I like to watch. And I've now found myself, I'll watch The View or have it on while I'm working, and then I'm watching GMA3 while it's on, but the rest of it is nonstop MSNBC, CNN, back and forth. Why just have it on and hear what's happening? Here's the thing about the talk. I saw their new lineup just because of this situation. There is no one on that lineup that makes me say, I can't wait to watch. I would want to even watch one episode of this. When they had Holly Robinson Pete, Sarah Gilbert, some Cheryl Underwood, who was the journalist who was the head lady, the head moderator, Julie Chen, I think is her name. That was a panel. I would have wanted to watch them, But these new people, I don't even know who they are, what they bring to the table. I see nothing about any of them that makes me even want to even know where they're from. Like they don't hold a candle to Sonny Hostin and Meghan McCain, and there is just no comparison of that group to this group. So I don't even want to. I say it's time for them to take the whole talk off the air and put 3+1 live cast. You put Zack and Tracey on there, and we'll give you Black excellence every week. That's how you can make up for this, CBS. You bring us over there, and you'll get something you ain't never seen before.
I'm coming too.
You know what? That's what I'm saying, Brian. You right there,
Dr. Brian Keith Harris II.
You relocate with us, right? No, we ain't leaving Atlanta. No, we ain't leaving Atlanta. We ain't going to New York, LA, or DC. But as long as it's in Atlanta, they can have us. Now, the only final thing, we always want to celebrate every week the best of us, the best of Black America. And this week, we're going to give the best of us to with a caveat. The caveat is this. I'm very thankful that The Weeknd came out against the Grammys. Not because The Weeknd deserved Grammys. Now, I'm not saying The Weeknd deserves anything. I like The Weeknd, but who are you to say you deserve to be Grammy nominated? That's very arrogant, very ego-driven. But I like the fact that artists are recognizing that you cannot let these established institutions recognize your excellence. We, the fans, the people that who put money in your pocket, we are the ones who say what's excellent. If we stream your album, we pay for your concert, we are telling you that you are good to go. You don't need a Grammy or an Oscar or an Emmy to validate yourself. It's a nice accomplishment. It's a nice trophy. It's a nice prize, but it needs to be devalued in a culture where they're valuing and upholding white supremacist viewpoints. Where the fact that we just had, for the first time in history, 2 women nominated for, I think it was Tracey, either Best Director or Best Producer at an Oscar. But with all the women who are in that field, you finally just now having 2 of them nominated at the same time is a clear sign that the Academy is flawed.
Here's the thing. It's not flawed.
It's the way it's meant to be.
It's the way that it is. It's the way that it has been. And until those artists stop seeking validation from those institutions and start coming to their own award shows and on a consistent basis, like you do the rest of them, okay, let me throw BET a bone to that for this year. Let me throw the Soul Train Award. Let me throw the NAACP Awards a bone and do the Zoom. Sometimes they show, hi, I'm sorry, I couldn't make it. I'm out in such and such doing a performance, but I accept this award. But you don't do that to the Grammys. You don't do that with the Oscars or the Emmys. You show up for them. You figure out a way to get a chartered plane to get you to and fro for everything else. So until those artists like The Weeknd start showing up for the communities that do celebrate them.
That's a good point.
It ain't no argument. I'm not finna back you with that.
And it goes back into the same thing about us creating our own schools, right? We consistently are asking systems that actually are not flawed, like Tracey said. They were designed to keep out people of color. That's why we still are having the first person to win. We're still having that in 2021. And so that is a representation of the system being or doing exactly what it was designed to do. So like Tracey said, until we as a community and culture recognize that there are some awards that celebrate Black excellence. How many people go to the Trumpet Awards? We ain't never even heard of the Trumpet Awards.
I have heard of the Trumpet Awards, Brian. They are held every year in the city of Atlanta.
The only person. What I'm saying is that you may have heard of the Trumpet Awards and you may show up at the Trumpet Awards, but did The Weeknd ever go to the
No. I'm not going to the Trumpet Awards. I'm not holy sanctified, saved like that.
I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah, it's a great example.
Right. I mean, the Trumpet Awards obviously celebrates like Black gospel, all of that. But I'm just saying in general, the NAACP awards, those other awards that have been created to celebrate, amplify, and affirm Black artists, right? But Black artists still are kind of looking at the Grammys and the Oscars and the Golden Globes as being things that they need to attain to affirm or to solidify their excellence. And that's
God just told me to correct my statement. He said for me to tell you, I am holy, I am sanctified, and I am saved, but I'm not going to the trumpet award. So God said, take that back.
Told you that. Now
He immediately put it. He said, take it back, and I said, Lord, I'm taking it back.
God ain't told you that. You told
in
yourself
obedience. In obedience. No, God literally just said, take back what you said because you are holy, saved, and sanctified. I was like,
he was convicted, Reverend.
That's what it was.
Hey, this show saves lives, okay?
It does. But not only that, all of what we just said to say Black excellence goes to Beyonce and Megan Thee Stallion on their Grammy wins, and to me, how Beyonce gracefully, but not so gracefully handled herself at the Grammys. A lot of people were talking about like her nonchalant demeanor. I think that was a clear sign of the validation that she didn't even need from the Grammys in the first place.
Exactly.
But it also speaks to her personality. I mean, we've never really seen her win an award and be like jumping for joy. And I mean, I think it's consistent with
correct
other awards that she's received and how she has responded when receiving other awards as well. But I also think that she is a person who doesn't always look to those entities to validate her. And that's evident in the fact that sometimes like her music, she tries to, not tries to, but she kind of owns it in the sense that, sometimes you can only get music from just her. And this is me having a limited understanding of kind of this music industry, but I think that she is one of the people who, in a real sense, understands that this is not the pinnacle of my success, or this does not denote success.
Exactly.
That's right.
And so she will be like, "Thank you, I appreciate it, but y'all just now seeing what I mean. I'm already flat. Like I don't need y'all, So that's kind of what the response is.
That's
and maybe not. Maybe Beyonce will respond to this and be like, "No, I was really excited. Y'all just couldn't see it. I don't know."
Y'all couldn't tell.
I sincerely doubt it. So I want to thank you, Brian, for joining us tonight. Tracey, it's great to see you. Everybody, thank you. We can't wait to see you next week.
Brian.
Yes.
You gotta come back.
I will be back for sure.
Okay.